Let's go. And hey, everybody, come on in the room. Let me tag a few people. Happy Sunday to you. Happy Sunday. We are in here with Freedom Friday on Sunday. I know that's weird, but we here today. Tag a few people as you're coming in. Let me tag some people so we can get this party started. So glad you're here. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday. Hope you've had a wonderful day. We are getting ready to have the discussion. So join in, come on in the room with us. We're excited about this when we have some lovely people on here today that would love to discuss some things with you. And I hope that you're going to listen. I hope that you're going to turn in. I hope that it benefits you and your family. So we're going to get started in just a few minutes. Let me tag a few people. They need to come on in the room. Hope y'all doing. How y'all doing today? My good people, my beautiful people that I'm looking at. K. Scott, Monet, how y'all doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Thank y'all for being here with us. Thank y'all for joining us. Let me tag a few more people. Let me tag some of these men. They be acting like acting. I don't know what football
Right?
game is on, but they need to get together. How about that? I ain't even worried about no football game. They need to come on in the room. So let me just tag a few people and we'll get started. Usually I play music, but you know, Facebook be acting funky. They be banning folks. So just gonna let that go today. When we come back, we're gonna be all the way live for real, for real. So all right, we're gonna get started shortly. All right. We'll tag some more people later, but we are live. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's your girl, Stefanie Ray Songbird, coming to you from Houston, Texas. And you know what we do. We have those conversations. We are super excited about what we are doing to help support individuals and families who are impacted by trauma. And of course, y'all know we do that through restoration, healing, and building healthy relationships. Speaking of, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Healthy relationships. We're going to be talking about survivors because this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we're also going to be talking about accountability. A lot of times we hear the stories about the survivors and the victims, but what happens to those that do harm, right? Where are they? What are they doing? And how can we hold them accountable? And so let me go ahead and just thank you all for joining us today. And I want to introduce a few of the good people to you that's in the room right now. And so first off, I want to introduce to you, and I don't know how y'all see them on y'all screen, but I see everybody. So that's what I'm going to say. So the first person that I want to introduce to you is Miss Monet Carter, the young and beautiful Monet Carter. She's the mother of two young queens, and she is raising them with the knowledge and awareness of one, what healthy is and what it isn't. And she is also an all-around soccer mom, swim mom, volleyball mom, all types of sports. This is your girl right here, Monet. And currently, I'm so happy and so proud of her. She is pursuing her bachelor's in criminal justice, and her desire is to become an attorney who will assist those in matters of domestic violence. So welcome today, Monet. Thank you for coming on with us. Now, next, let me get over here because this is where I see. I'm not gonna say his whole name because y'all see it on K. Scott. Let me introduce K. Scott, y'all. Let me introduce K. When I first met K. Scott, I thought we were related, but we're not, right? But we might as well be. So this is K. Scott, and I work with K. Scott in my regular job. Y'all know I'm funny, right? He works for Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council. That is a mouthful, yes. And he is a DVHRT coach. I'm not even finna try to break that down. I'm gonna let K. Scott explain that, right? But what he does, he holds batterers accountable for abusive behaviors, and he provides tools and services that promote behavior change. So, K. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Because a lot of times, you know, working in this business, we work with the survivors, and I don't want to say business, but in this industry where we're helping families, we're seeing them broken apart. You know, we're seeing all of this. What happens to the batterers, right? All right, and last but not least, and in a pinch, y'all, I love my sister. My sister, I love her. I couldn't make it without her. Let me introduce to you Arthur Deidre Harris Haynes She just got married, so let me make sure I say that. Deidre Harris Haynes, right? She is an author. She is a minister. She is a healer. She is a mentor. She is a grandee, right? And she loves her family. She is also a survivor, and I'm so thankful that she did survive, and she has been able to help others survive. So I'm thankful for her being on the call today, and she will be able to, speak with us today and just give more wisdom, as it's important that we have these conversations. Songbird always wants to talk about breaking the cycles, and we cannot break cycles if we do not have the conversation, even if it's a hard conversation. We want to make sure that we are paving the way for our children that are going to come behind us, that they don't have to experience things like this. And I'm sure a lot of us can attest. There's a lot of things we learned that we didn't know, right? Because maybe mom and them didn't talk about it, or because today all of us on here are African American. I'm definitely going to speak about the perspective of domestic violence in our community, in the Black community, and what that looks like, and let y'all chime in. Before we get started, let me just put a few definitions out there, because people will catch the replay. But we talk about domestic violence, we talk about abuse, we talk about intimate partner violence, right? And people say, what is it? What's the difference? First of all, it's power and control. Anybody that is trying to oppress you or gain power or control over you, whether it be physically, mentally, spiritually, economically, I mean, I can keep going, right? That is what domestic violence or intimate partner violence is. That's abuse, period, in a nutshell, right? So if you need a definition, let me just give you the Merriam-Webster definition. Intimate partner violence is physical, sexual, or psychological abuse of a person by their partner or spouse. There are four main types, and some of you may know or may not know. I'm not going to assume. I'm going to give you the information, and that is physical. Stalking is also one, and a lot of people, believe it or not, don't look at stalking as intimate partner violence. That's a problem. And so it can be physical, sexual, stalking, and it all can be. The psychological is the mental part, right? They may not ever touch you, but mentally they're breaking you down. And then we have, of course, domestic violence. When we say domestic, when you put the domestic part in there, that means it's happening in the home, right? Where you live, in your what's supposed to be your safe place, right? So it's violent or aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving the violent abuse of a spouse or partner. And I'm going to add your children as well, right? Because if you're being abused, your children 9 times out of 10 can also be abused. And so definitely it's a pattern of behavior, basically in any relationship that is used to gain, again, like I said, it's used to gain or maintain power and control over another person. That's it in a nutshell. I want to make sure that you're clear on that as we get ready to have the conversations today. Again, if you're hearing this and you are in danger, if you're in one of these situations, if you're triggered, we do not want to leave you without resources. Please contact 1-800-799-7233 or 1-800-799-SAFE. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you can't dial that number, you can text START, START, to 88788. That's where you can begin. If you are in immediate danger, call 911. Call them right now. Right? Call them right now so you can get the help that you need. All right, so let's get this started. I want to start one just to share the stats. I saw these stats. And we were talking earlier, because if you've worked in domestic violence or ever learned about it, trained on it, so on and so forth, there is something that we call the power and control wheel. And so this came from Duluth, and I cannot think of the state, but I know the city is Duluth, and Kenneth, you can help me.
Minnesota.
Minnesota, thank you. It's Duluth, Minnesota, where they created the power and control wheel. And what that means, again, domestic violence is where you maintain power and control over another person. So it's just not physical, but this wheel shows you the different types of power and control, whether it's economic, whether it's privilege, right? Emotional abuse, using kids. It shows you all of this. And so again, like I said, from the perspective today, all of us on here are people of color. They actually have a power and control wheel. That's the African American power and control wheel. And I told Kay Scott earlier, and Monet heard me, I feel some kind of way, right? And we are probably going to have a part 2 of this discussion because I cannot wrap my head around it right now. Because first of all, it's one thing to know there is I guess a regular power and control wheel, but then they've classified it into a African and African American, and I feel some kind of way, but I'm reading it and I'm just like, it is so doggone accurate. It's ridiculous, right? And so I feel like this is going to be a part 2 of this. But I want to throw that out there. I will not put it on the screen today, but when we come back, we're going to share it. It may be a deeper conversation than us just doing a Freedom Friday on a Sunday, because I'm reading this and I'm just like, the accuracy of this, and why do we put up with this, right? Because some of it I'm like, dang, I've experienced that, and dang, I be hearing people call people that now, and we just be rolling around like it's no big deal, right? So anyway, let me get out my feelings, y'all. So let me just share some stats. I wanted to share some stats about us in domestic violence in the Black community. So just a few statistics, and I'm gonna open it up for you guys to just tell me how you feel. 45.1% of Black women and 40.1% of Black men have experienced intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking in their lifetimes. 45.1% of Black women, 40.1% of Black men. And it says here 31.8% of Black women have experienced one or more of the following intimate partner violence related impacts: being fearful, concern for safety, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, those symptoms, injury, need for medical care, housing service, victim advocate services, and or legal services, or this, have missed at least one day of work or school because of the violence that they are going through or that's happened to them. And some of us, when I'm saying this, you probably can relate to this, right? And so also the psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime, 53.8% of Black women and 56.1% of Black men. And so those are just a few statistics that I want to read to you, but I want to go one more to homicide, where it turns from violence into homicide, meaning you are no longer here. And an estimated 51.3% of Black adult female homicides are related to intimate partner violence. Between 2003 and 2014, 57.7% of Black adult female homicide victims were murdered with the use of a firearm. And I have to say this one because it says Black females had the highest rate at 2.55% out of 100,000 people. Those statistics are alarming and scary, and this is why we have to have the conversation today. Definitely have to have the conversation. So let me open it up. First and foremost, after hearing those statistics, what comments do you have? Monet, I see you shaking your head. What comments do you have with those statistics that I just said?
It's just hearing it, I'm not shocked. But if anything, you would think that the DA's office would help when we come running. Given that I literally just tried to get a restraining order and they telling me that it's not enough to give me a restraining order, but I have people popping up at my door telling me that they found me because they smell my scent. At any given time, my life could have been gone, and I would have been part of that. And it's really sad and it's pathetic.
Definitely.
Of what all us Black women have to really go through.
Gotcha. Why do in those numbers? Okay, and of course we know the numbers have to be different because we have a whole African and American power and control wheel, right? I always like to ask this question, and I'm glad K. Scott is here because we have a man on here in a man's perspective. Why is it so difficult for us as people of color to reach out for the help and support we need when we may be experiencing domestic violence?
I think the biggest part, and excuse the background noise for everybody that's on the call. So I think the biggest thing is, man, I know for me personally, just speaking personally, I know my mom growing up was one to where it's like, when she did ask for help at times, people wouldn't lend it. And therefore, she will always be viewed as someone that was always in need. So she was like, I don't want to be looked at like that anymore. So I'm just going to deal with whatever I have to deal with, type of situation. And so that can make it hard for people to want to reach out, because it's like, man, when I did have something, you didn't want to do nothing to help me. So I'm going to try to just thug it through by myself. And I think that's typically what happens. So if we can lend a helping hand to someone, you know, it can be very minimal. Like, hey, this person keeps stalking me, like calling me or something. Can you help? Like, it'd be something that's minimal, or it could be something that's massive. If someone like, hey, he keeps popping up at my door. Like, so no matter how minimal or maximum, I think if we just attend to, hey, can you help me the first time, it will help everything after that.
I was gonna say, that's a great point, because that's what I was thinking. You know, I had a couple of thoughts running through my mind, and the first was, you know, we first of all have a mentality of what goes on in this house stays in this house. So that has been embedded within us for so long that we don't speak out about the things that we're going through. We don't speak out about our need for help. And then you have the other part that plays into that. You have that fear factor, whereas we're not asking for the help because we can't even get help in the little situations that we have going on. We can't get the help that we need with childcare. We can't get the help that we need with food. So when we come to a dire situation where it's live or die, then we get stuck in that fear factor. Well, what's the point of me calling the police? Because if he goes to jail, then my kids are still gonna go without, because then I can't go to work or I don't have food, you know. And so we deal with so many more factors that some of the other races may not have to even consider, because of the fear factor, because of what goes on in this house, because of those generational things that have been taught to us. And so we look at it, and I can say this because I was almost one of those statistics. And again, it's you revert back. Sometimes you want out of the situation, but because the system doesn't work in our favor, then you end up going back to that situation because you need, one, that extra income, or two, you need that childcare because you're there going through it alone. And a lot of times you do feel like you are truly going through it alone.
Yes, indeed. And
you
said, go ahead.
And I was going to say another thing too, a lot of times, systemically, right? The system be like, oh, they just gonna go back to them anyway, right? So they're like, why would I? I'm not gonna keep on going out trying to make an effort. And it's just because like we don't accept the help the first 5 times doesn't mean that the 6th time we're not going to need help. And so I think like systemically that plays a huge part in it as well. They're like, man, I'm not gonna keep going over there. It's the same story. We know that he's gonna go back, right? So I think that also can play a part in it as well when it comes to things of that nature.
Yes and no. I'm agree with you. Yes and no. Because me being in that situation, and I literally have every incident number that they wrote on me on a blue piece of paper. Every time they came out, about 6, 7 of them. And each time I begged for help, they would not. They would not take him. They would not remove him. Nothing happened until I was being charged because I finally fought back. But each time I begged for the help, they would not give it to me. Ever. And it's crazy that a person has to go as far as to losing their life or having something happen to their children, or you having to fight now charges where you can't even pay for lawyers. So it's really ridiculous that that's the point that we're at with everything. But I agree with what you said to a certain extent.
I agree. I agree with what everybody said, and what Monet is saying, the systems that are built in a way against us. I remember being younger, and what is it when we call as people of color, there's a few things going on in our mind. First of all, we just want you to take them away. We don't want you to kill them. Let's just throw that out there, right? So that's, I know we're talking about what, maybe generationally what we've been taught as to why we, maybe don't speak up, different things like that. But think about when you get the boldness to stick up or speak up, the systems that are coming against you, right? And so when the police arrive, as Monet said, somebody going to jail, either the angry Black woman is going to jail. Because on this time when y'all came, I decided to fight back and I busted him upside his head with a frying pan, right? But I've been calling y'all this whole time and y'all been coming, ma'am, there's nothing we can do. You can leave. You can tell him that we can't intervene, all of that stuff. The other thing that plays a role, and it's systematically, again, if you have children, the other thought is one of us is going to go to jail. Who gonna get my kids, right? Now, officers of the law, every once in a while, and I love the police officers, I love our law enforcement, is not bashing them, but there are a few. There's not any nurturing, there's not any patient. We know from where we work, as far as what we do in our job is to kind of collaborate a coordinated response, right? What does that mean? If we're going to educate you, we're going to educate you on domestic violence. We're going to educate the hospitals. We're going to educate the police officers so that when they're called to a scene like this, hopefully they are trauma informed, if that makes sense, and they can be of a help and not more of a detriment with that going on. So I agree with y'all. I definitely agree with Monet. The thing is, more conversations like this are needed, but I'm also a firm believer we can talk all day, but what is the solution? Where we can talk and see where there's something that's lacking, but how do we implement the change that is needed? So why these families don't have to keep experiencing this. Those that are being victimized can get the resources, and the help that they need. And again, we're going to talk about the batterers in a minute as well. When we started this conversation, I had a question that came up in my mind as far as from the healthy relationship perspective. And my question is, yes, there's domestic violence. I see you, K. Scott. K. Scott has to leave us really quickly because of where he is. I want to make sure that because he's here and he does deal with the batterers, let me ask this question from the perspective of you working with the batterers and those that have done the abuse in the job role that you're doing. When you are working with the batterers, what do you find is the underlying cause for them, right? Because we said domestic violence purpose is to maintain power and control over somebody else. So when you are working with them as far as rehabilitation, what do you find? Because you're talking about changing behaviors and thought processes. What do you find is the underlying reason for them being batterers?
One of the biggest things that came up as I was observing one of these BIP programs, and BIP stands for Batterer Intervention Prevention Program. A lot of the guys, this is actually a question that came up. It was like, what is the number one thing of why things happen like that? And the biggest thing is emotional insecurity. That's one of the things. That's the big driver. It's like you get to a point where there's an insecure spot within yourself that you have the power and control that you just can't let go, because if that power and control gets let go of that insecurity, then you can get taken advantage of at any given time. And then also, in addition, it's a learned behavior over time, knowing what you're supposed to know and not knowing what you don't know too. So those two plays a part. And the biggest thing is just them not being aware of, what triggers that may cause. So there's like a lot of escalation signals that may go on. So like if a person says a certain word or phrase to you that you may not go along with, that may trigger a certain insecurity about yourself that you like, nah, bump that, whoop-de-whoop, wop. There may be something physically inside of you that may happen. And so it's just like the main culprit of everything is just like that emotional insecurity, and people just act on that emotion. That's what seems like the biggest thing through observing.
Wow. Anybody else have any comment? He said emotional insecurity. You get so emotionally insecure that you become aggressive and you lash out, and of course learn behaviors. We start learning as little kids. Think about the little kid that have a fit when you tell them no, right? What do? They fall out, they have a temper tantrum. You be like, if you don't get off that floor, you're gonna get what you're looking for, right? So these are batterers. And I'm thinking in my mind, I went back to childhood because you said emotional insecurity, and I think about us because we break cycles. Like that tells me even so much more, because I work with the youth in our job. I go and talk about healthy relationships with them, right? And some of these behaviors that they have never been curved or kind of brought into balance, right? So imagine this child turning into an adult. What are we going to deal with, right?
And it's crazy too. Like you mentioned that, like when you're young, they don't know how to identify what that feeling is to work towards managing it or like shaping it to where it doesn't trigger them at all. So I think that's another big part too. Like when they're young, like a lot of times, like when my daughter gets rallied up, I ask her like, what do you feel? Like, because I want to understand that emotion. Is it you mad? Is it that you're sad? It's like identify what that feeling is so that you can work towards managing it. And I think that's the biggest play too, because they just float with it as they go along. And then at some point in life, they're just not aware or want to fix that certain thing that had been triggering them for so long. And when they get a certain age, they're like, man, what is it? They don't know. And plus they don't want to go to therapy to identify what that is, to work through it. So they're just like, hey, it's just like an elevator button being ready to be pushed at any given time, you know. So that's a huge thing.
Yes, sir. And I know you have to go, and ladies, we can continue this. I had a question for you because I didn't know. I know you deal. Is it only male batterers that you deal with in your role, or female too?
All the above.
That's
But
what I was wondering.
majority is going to be male. That's about probably, they say anywhere between 90 to 93% male.
Okay, gotcha.
Unless it's unless it's more of a female that identifies herself as a male, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So that can be, you know, up in the air as well.
Gotcha. And do the female batters, like in your experience, like I can think in my mind, like not because they identify as a male, but like I'm talking about a female like me. Like, do you find that there's a difference as far as their mentality or why they're abusive? I know we just talked about emotional insecurity, but is it the same thing for the female batterers as well?
It's like, it's weird. It's so there's one where they just let stuff just keep racking up as far as like certain instances where maybe disrespect, maybe whatever it is, and then they just snap all of a sudden. You just never know, right? And then there's just some instances where there's a more feministic male and the female is the more dominant one. And so, and that can be due to her upbringing, like, hey, my mom was a strong woman, so I'm not gonna let nobody else outstrong me, right? And that comes from childhood, you know, being raised by maybe a single mother, and her mother may be like, hey, you don't ever let a man whoop-de-whoop to you. So that can trigger a part too. So it kind of all stems from childhood in a way. Like, how was you up growing up? And, you know, so it's weird. So those are things you get, like certain things women let build up and then they snap, or it's just something in them from childhood that's like, no, you don't ever let a man do whoop-de-whoop. You don't ever boom. And so they exert that dominance like if it was a male, like, nah, I'm standing on business like anytime. So that's where you get it.
All right. And the last question, and I'm something you said, I saw Monet and D shaking their heads. So I got to come back to this question. But for you, really and truly, do you believe in the work that you do that abusers' behavior can change for the better, you know?
Yeah, I firmly believe that they can change. You know, I love statistics. So I did a stat of, you know, after someone gets done with BIP programs usually are 18 weeks long. After they get done with BIP, what's the statistics on the recidivism? Meaning like when they will go back to the previous behavior. And they said 2/3 of individuals that after BIP, they return. And it's because it's like, it takes time. Like you can't just instantly fix it overnight. Like it's like 20, 25 years of you dealing with this stuff over and over again. So it's going to take time. So I feel like, you know, with this program, and you played a key role in this about framing this as more of a continuum of care, right? An extension of what they stuff that they already been through. So like they'll go through their BIP program and then they'll convert to me. And then for me, we have a year program where we work hand in hand. And then after that year, we'll be on a quarterly basis. But at least within those 2 years, they can break that statistic of 2/3 of the people going back and reverting. So I feel like it just needs time. You just need someone there as an accountability partner just to be like, hey man, no, slow down. Remember, this is what you said. You want to be a better parent, partner, and a person. So remember, these are your goals. These are what you said you was going to work on. These are your triggers that you said you was going to minimize. So I just think it just takes time. But they can change. It just takes time and consistent work.
Indeed. And I know you have to go, but the question I was asking when you was talking about, you know, some females, you know, they just had them snappable tendies. You put them in the corner, and Deidre and Monet both was like they was like, yeah, like what was y'all feeling when K Scott was saying that? Because I had a whole entire thought that came over me, but I am not the one on the hot seat. Y'all are. So I see y'all hands like, what did y'all feel when he was saying that, like about the female batterers? What was y'all feeling?
Because for me, it just took me back to when I was put in that position. Um, Even with the relationship I just got out of and the one where my actual abuser, I took it until I couldn't. And so that's when I end up in jail because I finally fall back. Or this situation where I took it and before I know I'm tasing him or I'm pistol whipping him because I done asked you to stop. I done asked you to keep your hands to yourself. And I'm not quick to pop, but you done pushed me there and it's like I done took in so much. And now I'm fighting. It's like I feel like I'm putting myself in that position to be an abuser when I'm not. And I'm fighting hard not to be that person, but it's like you're pushing me to be that person when all I've asked you to do is stop.
Definitely understand. I'm not a killer, but don't push me.
At
Indeed.
all.
All right. And Sis D, what were you? I saw both of y'all. What was your head shaking about?
I mean, for me, I was stuck on those learned behaviors and those, those unresolved issues, those insecurities and things that they do have. And not only that, but you think about the transference. Well, I didn't learn how to deal with my feelings or emotions. So therefore now I'm gonna transfer that off onto somebody else. But it's like you said, when you get to that point, I start thinking, I'm in love, yes, those snappable tendencies, because no, I'm not a fighter naturally. But if you push me long enough, if you push me hard enough, and so even for me in my situation, I was like, because I was that chick that said, I wish you would. And so for me, then being in that situation, because there was no place that I ever thought I was going to be in, because I was like, oh no, I'm gonna get you before you get me. But it didn't happen like that. And I understood that there were some things that God was allowing me to go through, because there were some things that had to be broken up in me, because I dealt with anger as a child, but I wasn't aggressive with it. I was passive. I held it in. So I held those things in. And so when I finally being in a domestic violence situation and you get pushed and you get pushed and you only take so much. And so finally for me, it got to the point was, you know what? I got something for you. I'm gonna get you before you get me the next time. And so I had a plan. Look, I'm over here devising me a whole plan, but God said that's not the plan that I have for you. So it was nothing but God that's kept me from trying to take his life before he took mine the last time. So I totally understood, about calling the police, and that's what I was saying. Sometimes it depends on your area where you are, because it's some things that they categorize us. Oh, if you live in this area, oh, y'all do that anytime. Anyway, y'all used to that. So sometimes you don't get that help that you need. Because my very last call to the police was this response right here. Ma'am, that's your husband. We can't do nothing about that. Did he live here too? He got as much right to be here. All right, I got something for you. You gonna take one of us to jail, or else you gonna be back, because one of us gonna leave in handcuffs and the other one gonna leave in a body bag. And then, of course, their response is, you can't say that to me. No, I'm saying it to you because now you got to put it on record. So then, like you said, they want to take you to jail, because now you the victimizer instead of the victim. So those are the things that you push long enough, then yeah, you do come out the corner fighting. You come out swinging. You ready for the knockout, because you like, nah, I ain't getting knocked out no more. I ain't getting pushed down no more. So I totally get it, those snappable tendencies. But thank God for God, because he kept me. He kept me.
Indeed. That's snappable tendencies. I feel a whole play a song somewhere. I don't know where it's coming, but I feel it, because I mean, definitely I had a question, and I think just to share, as far as, because of course, being women of color, we know the reasons. We've talked a little bit about why, we don't call, or like you just said, they categorize some things with us as African American people in general. And even again, like I said, looking at that power and control wheel, versus the original power and control wheel, I think about, why I didn't call, because one, I was raised to be independent. And I remember my daddy telling my husband at that time, I raised her. So if you feel like you need to re-raise her, send her back home, right? So I didn't have, like you say, I've always been a fighter. And so I did, in my mind, my issue was, why didn't I report it, or why didn't I say anything? Is because I'm a fighter. in my mind, I fight, and what does that look like? I couldn't even recognize that it was abuse, right? Because if you tap me, you might as well get ready to square up and put the gloves on, brother, because we finna go toe to toe. And it wasn't always like that, but I had that mentality that I fight, I'm trying to say. And because we were going, sometimes tit for tat, or even if we might be throwing something, like you said, in a way, I also became abusive. I became not just the victim, I also became the abuser. So it was just like, yeah, I mean, I remember one time literally saying, where can I send these kids? I just need, we got bail. I got 2 weeks, like if we go around, I just need somebody to come get these kids. Like, and it wasn't that I was getting hit every day. Mine was a lot of the verbal, and it was subtle, I'm trying to say. So what would happen for me, because I don't go back and forth with people like that, I say what I need to say and I go on with my life. The issue was because I was so straightforward and I said something, it would literally knock him out of socket. And the fight, it would be an all day, like like little kids, picking at each other. And that's not healthy. Like when I think about what is the really the root, like I asked K Scott before he left, like what is the root? And he's saying emotional insecurity. I really, that light bulb came on for me because I really lived with that. Someone that was so emotionally insecure that it trickled over to our children, like why would you be intimidated of your kids? I have never, where do they do that at? And so that's what let me know, yeah, this isn't, I didn't see that growing up. My dad wasn't intimidated of us. He loved us, he pushed us. He expected what I put in you or what I allow you to do, I want you to do, trying to say great things with. So the abuse started looking real crazy, so I definitely understand the snappable tendencies, because in that, right, again, I became abusive. Like Dee said, that's not the way. We weren't created. One, we weren't created to be hit. That's not what we're created for. We are not created to be abused. We're not, if you're listening to this, you were not put on this earth to be someone's punching bag. You are not the savior. There is only one savior. And if they can't get it through them, you can pray for them, but don't take it on. I even think some of us as women, I can't speak for the men, and there's probably some men that do it too. We try to save our partner. The question is, this is the famous question, and I'm gonna throw this out here. And we're gonna have to do a part 2 because y'all have to see this power and control wheel. We just have to come back and do a part 2. I have to send this to y'all. But that question that they always ask, and people have so many things to say, especially when they when they haven't gone through it, they're not experiencing it. Why don't you just leave? That's the question. Why don't you just leave? And you just want to look at them and say, really? That's the best you got? So, Monet, why didn't you just leave, Monet?
I get that often. And it triggered me when I hit it. Because I don't know if I want to cuss you out or explain it to you. But when the times that I wanted to just leave, or I tried to just leave, I got a box cutter put in my neck. I got raped in the closet with my daughter in my hands. There is no just leaving. You can just leave and you'll be leaving in the body bag. You have to plan it. And sometimes you don't have that circle. You don't have that family that you can go to, because believe it or not, some of my family contributed to me getting hit. So I had to plan accordingly. So you can't just leave when you have I have 2 kids that I had to think about before just walking out that door. Because I can walk out, one of the children was his. How I know my child wasn't going to be here, or will she be here? He had already took her from me, kidnapped her. Wasn't nothing I can do about it because he's that. So you got to plan. There is no just leaving. Because if I just left, nobody was going to attend my funeral. Or why didn't she come to me for help? Why did she just leave like that? So there is no such thing as just leaving somebody who is comfortable with being an abuser. Someone who has anger problems that they cannot control. Because they're not them when they're angry. They're somebody else.
And D, I'm gonna ask you, and yes, definitely, it's easier for you to ask that question than the action to put behind it. D, why you just didn't leave, D?
Yeah, I totally agree with Monet, because there is no just leave. And like she said, you do have to have a plan. You do have to strategize. And a lot of times you don't have, as she said, you don't have that circle. And sometimes those people in your circle are, like you said, they so connected to the other person that, you look up and they trying to tell them why you done left, and that, hey, did you know she planning this? And they done gave your whole plan away that you done planned out 6 months of your life trying to plan your escape and how you gonna get out. And they waiting at the airport with the person in the car to tell you get back in the car. Get in the car, Tina. No, we're not doing that. And that's how it goes, unfortunately. But as far as just leaving, again, it's like I stated before, sometimes there's those financial reasons. That person was maybe watching your kids so that you could go to work, so that you could provide for them. So now if you get rid of them, you leave them, then where's your babysitter? Where's your job? Then there's so many more factors that we don't think about, or people don't think that they think it's just so easy. Well, you can just walk out the door. Don't they go to work? No, that's not how it works, because you don't understand the threats that come behind the scene. You don't understand I can have your kids taken, or you don't understand, or if you do this, I'm gonna go kill your mama, I'm gonna go kill your sister, I'm gonna go kill you. You don't understand that. And when you're dealing with someone, for me, my situation, my is a bipolar addict. He don't even know who he is some days. So how was I supposed to know who he was going to be from one day to the next? And so when you're dealing with all this range of emotions, and especially if you're dealing with somebody who feels like they have nothing to lose but you, they will take you and your whole family out, and will mean it. And will mean it. And so you have a lot of things to factor into, because where are my kids going to be without me? So a lot of times you have all of these people that you're considering other than yourself. Yes, it's a bad situation for you, but it could be worse for your entire family, because you got to think like the lunatics. You got to think like the addicts. You got to think like the bipolars. You got to think like the schizophrenics. So in that process, you have to take the time. And a lot of times it's saving money. Do I have the money to leave? Do I have the resources to leave? Do I even have a place to go? Because you have some of these shelters, they won't take you if you have kids. Some of them won't take you if you're pregnant. Some of them won't take you if you've been in this situation before, because they're afraid they invite you in, you're going to go back, then he's going to find everybody there. So there's so many things that play a role into why you don't just leave, because there is no just leave. There's no such thing as just leave. It's time, money, resources, effort, energy. You have to have a solid plan. And if you got any loophole in that plan whatsoever, it'll rip you apart. And the system, again, does not help. The system does not help. It is not designed to help women in need. It is not designed to help those men who are in need. And unfortunately, there's even fewer resources for men, because if you're a man, how you getting abused? But it happens. So yeah, there's no just leave. It has to be well thought out. And like I said, my plan was, when I realized, okay, I put him out. So I understand Monet trying to get the restraining order. If you get a restraining order, they come back, they break it in your house. And I'm like, why are you sitting in my driveway? I got a whole restraining order against you. Why have you broken into my house and you sitting in my living room when I walk through the door? I still have a whole restraining order against you. How many times are you going to break back into this house that they say, well, you married to him, he got a right to be here? How many times is that going to happen before I can really get help? So they don't take all of those things into consideration. So there's no just leave.
Yes, well spoken and well answered. First and foremost, we're gonna close on that note, because again, if you're watching or if you catch the replay, as I said earlier, if you are in a situation where you are experiencing domestic violence, intimate partner violence, or abuse, we are encouraging you to get out. Again, the National Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800-799-7233 or 1-800-799-SAFE. Or you can also text START. Again, that is text START to 88788. What I would like to leave, I always one to leave resources, because we've talked about a few things today. And again, we want to be aware this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, right? But we're fighting this every day. It's not just in October that we're celebrating survivors. This is still a fight. It's an ongoing thing daily. You know, I work daily and with the youth, I get reports from their families. This is a daily thing where families are needing help and needing assistance, whether it's men or women. Domestic violence has no respect of person. It doesn't have any type of income, you know, or budget, you know, restrictions. You know, you can be rich and be in a domestic violence situation. You can be down on your luck and be in a domestic violence situation. It has no discrimination for those, you know, that are dealing with those abusers because you are in prestigious areas. Abuse is still wrong. I don't care. You do not deserve to be hit. You are not created to be anybody's punching bag or anybody's doormat. And so, with that being said, if you watch this or catch the replay and you're in a situation, we gave the number earlier, but you also may want to think about safety planning. And what does that look like? Just like Deidre said, I planned for 6 months, and all of a sudden, one of the family members, you know, gave the location away, right? Like Monet said, you know, it's easier for you to ask that question than for me to do that, because some of the family members are contributing to some of the foolishness that the abuser or the batterer was doing. The first thing I'm going to tell you to do, you got to acknowledge the abuse. And I shared that I didn't think it was abusive. Yeah, it was abusive. We were at once it was just him, and then it started being me. We was abusing each other. You have to acknowledge. The first thing you got to do is acknowledge that this is not safe. And if you have children, if it's not safe for you, then you have to know it's not safe for your children. So the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that there is abuse, right? That's the first thing you want to be able to do. What's a red flag? We didn't talk about red flags today, but when I talk about healthy relationships, I usually talk about that. If they're jealous, if they're possessive, if they're calling you names, if they have financial control, if you can't go to the bathroom without walking out the bathroom and they in your face, you might be in an abusive relationship. And I'm so serious, right? If they blame you for everything, right? If they're forcing you to have and be intimate and you saying no, not only are you being abused, you're being raped. Let's just be honest, right? That is abuse, right? When they're being cruel, gaslighting, all of that. Acknowledge that I am being abused and I deserve better. And we are believers. So the Lord says you are fearfully and wonderfully made. He ain't create you to be beat up or endure that. That's not what you're here for. You're here for a purpose, and it's greater than being somebody's punching bag. The next thing you want to do is make a decision to leave. And that's when you have to think, how can I leave? Where can I go? Where are some safe people that can really support me leaving in this safety plan? What do I need to do? How much money do I need to obtain? Where do I need to, get my children situated? All that is part of safety planning and getting support, right? You might need to seek support from one of the agencies. We're here in Houston, so what is that? Houston Area Women's Center is one of those agencies that you can call or go to their website, and they definitely can, walk you through that or assist you. There's Bridge Over Troubled Water. There's so many things that you can definitely Google for assistance, but you have to get some support. Why? Because doing the same thing over and over again, it's not going to get you a different result. You're going to need some support in order to break this cycle. And then you can begin to create your safety plan. And that might look like you going ghost. What do they say? Going ghost or being quiet, right? That might look at you not talking to nobody, because don't nobody need to know what your next step is, especially the abuser or the batterer that you're with, right? We just had a event called a Fixed Fight about 2 weeks ago. And Deidre was one of the speakers on there, but we talked about something that's called a danger assessment. And what that danger assessment is, it's an assessment like any other, but the higher you score on that assessment, the higher you're at risk of losing your life. The violence has changed from violence into homicide, right? And so those are a couple of things, and not to scare you, but think about that. Does this person own a gun? Right? Have they ever threatened you with a weapon? Do they tell you, I'm going to kill you? Right? That's abuse. That's a threat. I don't play with threats, because what if you decide to take take that threat seriously, right? My life is on the line. Not only my life, my children's life can be on the line. So safety planning, like I said, if you're in danger, if this is you, you know, we are talking today because the conversation is needed. But there are people that are in place that can help you and support you, safety plan you, so you and you or your children can get to a better place and be free and live. And yes, it's going to take work, right? But there are resources available that can help you. So with that being said, again, I want to thank my lovely guests for coming on this Sunday. We're Freedom Friday and it's Freedom Sunday today. Thank you, Monet, so much. We wish you well as you continue to pursue your bachelor's. Yeah, go ahead and get that, girl, so you can be that attorney to tear them up. I'm talking about tag them, tell them they ain't right, and get the help for the families that are needing the assistance and the help. So we wish you well in that. To my sister, you know, you do so much, but I love you. Thank you for always being ready to be transparent and to share. Y'all, this girl is truly a healer. I mean, like no other. And resilience is the word that I have for her, because I have seen her overcome so much, and I have seen God move on her behalf. And so again, we love you. We thank you for joining us today. This is Stefanie Ray, Songbird, your girl in Houston, Texas, the Songbird and me. We are truly, truly breaking cycles. Stay tuned. Follow us on the songbirdandme.com for more information as we do more things in the community. You can follow us on Facebook, the Songbird and Me. You can look on IG. It's so many of these platforms. Stefanie Ray Songbird, right? But you can see what we're doing, and we definitely will continue to have more of these hard conversations. And eventually, like I said, we can't just talk about it. We have to have a solution. So that's what we're looking for, a solution to be that change that people cannot be for themselves. But until next time, you guys be safe. Have a beautiful evening. Enjoy your week. And we will see you soon. Bye.